Well, hello and welcome to High Performance Leadership, the science of how to go from busy to brilliant. I'm your host for today, Dr. Leonora Rhodes. I am a physician turned corporate trainer and executive coach, and I help people up-level their brains and their lives. And I am so delighted that you are here with me today for this presentation. I love talking about this topic. You might be interested. The first time I delivered this was to the Tony Robbins coaches when I was one of their team. They asked me to develop a training. Tony often talks about high performance, but he doesn't talk about the science behind it. So I developed this training for that audience and delivered it to them, and they loved it. So I'm delighted to also deliver it to you today. So that's kind of the background of where this particular training came from. Peak performance doesn't happen by accident. And here are pictures of lots of different peak performers, but we also have people like, top neurosurgeons, we might have top marketeers. You can be a peak performer in absolutely any field. These are just some famous examples. But it's really important to know that peak performance doesn't happen by accident. And it's very interesting. My old boss, Tony Robbins, has coached many peak performers in all sorts of fields, even fields that he's never actually been involved with. Like he's coached basketball players and tennis players and boxers very famously. I can't remember the name of the boxer, very famously took a boxer who had been brilliant and then kind of fell off the rails and got him back on good form. So it doesn't happen by accident. These people are doing certain things in a certain order in order to be at the top of their game and to stay there, for many years, especially with some of these athletes. They have been at the top of their game for a remarkable amount of time, sometimes 20 years, whereas, a lot of people in their field burn out. Please note, always, I mentioned this disclaimer, please note this webinar is for information only and should not replace professional medical advice or treatment. If you are concerned that you or anybody in your family has significant health or emotional issues that impact the ability to function normally, please seek the advice of a healthcare professional. I would like to encourage you to take notes and write down ideas. I'm going to be delivering a lot of content today. Some of it might not be interesting to you, but anything that's of interest to you, write it down. Neuroscience wise, this helps you process what you've learned and also remember it going forward. So take plenty of notes. We're going to begin by doing one of my favorite things, which is to prime our brains. Again, going back to my old boss, Tony, he has a 20-minute brain priming exercise. And it's really great. I encourage you to go and take a look at it. But 20 minutes is a long time for a lot of people to kind of fit into their day. And I actually developed this short. It's not a version of Tony's, it's different, but I developed this for children with special needs who were doing a program for dyslexia. And a lot of the children didn't want to do the work. And so I developed this exercise so that the parent could help the child get into a good state before they sat down to do the work. So join me if you will. If you are driving while you are listening to this, obviously, please do not join in. But if you're not, I would love you to. So I want you to take your right hand and place it against your left hand. So kind of in a prayer-like position. And start to rub your fingertips together. And really notice the ridges on your fingertips. Close your eyes if you would like. Notice the ridges on your fingertips. And now just with the pointing finger, the index finger. Notice your breathing as you do this. Now with your middle finger. Wonderful. Now bring all your fingertips together and run the fingers of your right hand down the fingers of your left hand. So the fingertips of the right hand down the fingers of the left hand to your palm, and move your fingertips around your palm. Notice the fine lines. Notice the deep lines. Notice the temperature and any sensations. And now bring your hands back together and rub them together to create some heat and shake it out. Wonderful. So hopefully now we've calmed your nervous system, got rid of any stresses and strains that you were bringing with you. And now we're going to wake your brain up and get it ready to learn. So I want you to take your fists and place them in front of your face. And we're going to punch across the midline while we say a very famous mantra. So repeat after me. Every day, in every way, I'm getting better and better. Yes. Every day, in every way, I'm getting better and better. Yes. Every day, in every way, I'm getting better and better. Yes. And now sit in a Superman or Superwoman posture. And we are ready to learn. Thank you for joining in with that exercise. And I actually often do this if I am feeling in less than a good state. Say I was about to do a presentation like this. I was feeling pretty good this morning because I'd just done a workout. So I was in a good state. But say I'd had a bit of a slow morning, been on a lot of calls, I would do this brain priming exercise before I came on a training like this because I want to be in a really good state for you today. So let's talk about what is peak performance. Back to Tony again. He is really the master of peak performance. He says peak performance is a mindset and a lifestyle. And by understanding how to reach peak performance, this means embracing healthy habits along with a sports mindset, the mindset of a champion. So I'm going to teach you how to develop the mindset of a champion today. So peak performance is when you function optimally in a specific situation. And the specific situation piece is important. Take Serena Williams, the tennis player. Even when she was a peak performer in tennis, she was not a peak performer in many other things. You know, if you'd asked her to perform a surgery or you'd asked her to do your taxes, she would not have been able to do that because she was not trained in that specific situation. So it is about training to be optimal in a specific situation or many situations that you have in your life. And often with my clients, we'll do this, we'll repeat this exercise. Maybe we'll do it for certain aspects of their work life. We often do one for presentation skills. This is, a big phobia of a lot of people. Maybe we'll do one for, how they're showing up with their family. So it's important to have peak states for lots of different situations. And the peak performance state is a mental, emotional, and physical state where you potentially get into flow and perform at a level at or close to your peak potential. And when I was creating, a couple of videos promoting this video, I gave a quote from David Goggins, who wrote a wonderful, he's written a couple of books. I forget the name of the second one, but I'm forgetting the name of the first one now. Anyway, look up David Goggins. In his first book, he talks about how many of us are achieving less than 40% of our full potential. And when you think about that 60% that you're leaving on the table, that's a real shame. What if you could get closer to your full potential? How different would your life be? Okay, I love this quote. This is from Yuri Vlaslo, who was a Soviet writer and retired heavyweight lifter and a politician. At the peak of tremendous and victorious effort, while the blood is pounding in your head, all suddenly comes quiet within you. Everything seems clearer and whiter than ever before. It's as if great spotlights have been turned on. At that moment, you have the conviction that you contain all the power in the world, that you are capable of everything, that you have wings. There is no more precise moment in life than this, the white moment, and you will work hard for years just to taste it again. And what Yuri is describing is being able to get into a peak state. And the good news is that you don't have to wait years. With the formula that I'm going to teach you today, you can learn to be in a peak state at will. So, quick exercise. I always get you doing some of the work. I want you to think about an area of your life that you are most happy with your performance in. And so we're going to call this area A. So, what area of your life are you doing well at right now? So just think of an area and write it down. I'm doing the same. And now I want you to think of an area of your life that you are least happy with your performance in. And let's call this area B. And by the way, I should have said this needs to be an area that you would like to improve on. It does, if it's something that you're not very good at, and so you delegate it and you don't care about ever being good at it, don't include that. So it needs to be something that you want to get better at sometime soon. Wonderful. And now I want you to have a think about the reasons why there is a difference between area A and area B. And just write down some of those reasons. Wonderful. So I hope you've got some ideas down. It's always good to kind of, know what's going on with you before we dive into all the theory stuff. So the key to peak performance, to high performance, is the regulation of your energy states. So effectively, there are 4 energy states that occur within you. We have low negative, low positive, and high positive. And these are sometimes called arousal levels or wakefulness in the brain. When I used to do neurofeedback therapy, I would be looking at people's brainwave activities, and then I could categorize, how much they were in the low negative, the low positive, the high positive, and the high negative. And in neurofeedback, these brain states have names. For example, alpha is low negative, and high beta is high negative. But we're not going to go too much into that level of detail, but just think of it as being these 4 energy states. So low negative, this is when you're falling asleep or waking up. And you also might, and by the way, when you experience it at those times, it's completely normal, and we don't want to get rid of that. But you might also experience it if you have depression or a low negative emotional state. Maybe you're kind of just fed up about something, maybe you're perseverating about something that's gone wrong. And then we also experience it when we are lethargic or we're feeling low motivation. Say you're about to do something you don't want to do, you might go into the low negative state. We also see it when you are drained or burnt out, chronically stressed. And by the way, I have a separate stress webinar and stress training. And in that, I talk about, unfortunately, people who are stressed often go from high negative to low negative, and they don't spend any time in the middle. And then illness as well. It's funny, when I used to do neurofeedback therapy and I'd be looking at someone's brainwaves, and I would have seen them the week before. I'd know what their brainwaves looked like. And then I'd see them again. I'd be like, something is up. There's a lot of slow wave activity. And it would often be that they were sick and coming down with something. Then we have high negative. Like I mentioned, this is what we see in acute stress. That is the kind of short-term stress reaction, fight, flight, freeze reaction. We also are in high negative when we are experiencing intense negative emotions like anxiety, anger, resentment, blame, guilt, and jealousy. It is unenjoyable, frustrating, and irritating. It's okay to pop into it, but once you are there for a bit of time, it doesn't feel good. And we often make mistakes and make poor decisions in this high negative state. I often say to my clients, you never want to make a decision from a stress state. Then we have low positive. This is calm, creative. This is the recovery state. It's relaxed. And this is a really good state to be in for everyday work. Say you wanted to sit down and write a blog article. This would be a completely appropriate state to be in. And it's also a good state to be in if you're getting ready to take action. This just popped into my head, but in the military, they train people, say, take a sniper who might be sitting for 10 hours before he needs to take action. He would be trained to be in this low positive state, conserving energy, keeping an eye on things, but not being too activated. And he would, and by preserving his energy in this way, he would be ready when he needed to take action. Then we have high positive. This is energized and in control. You would be thinking positive thoughts and experiencing positive emotions, happiness, joy, excitement, feeling energized. You would be focused on the process and not on the outcome. Performance would be effortless. You might feel motivated, enthusiastic, passionate, and purposeful. And this state is great. Say you're about to go and give a talk or you're about to play a tennis match. This is the state you want to be in. As you can imagine, it is using a lot of energy to be in this state. So you don't want to be in it at unnecessary times. Like if you were writing a blog article, you wouldn't really want to be in this high positive state. It would not be appropriate. I hope that makes sense. So performance, if we consider performance in terms of these four states, performance increases in the low positive and the high positive states, and it goes down in the low negative and the high negative states. Obviously, this curve would be skewed depending on the task that you were doing. Like I said, if you were playing tennis, you'd want it to be more skewed over to the high positive. And if you were writing blog articles, you'd want it to be more over to the low positive. So how do we become a peak performer at will, more often, and with less effort? It's all about optimizing your energy. We want to think of it. I'm actually going to go straight to the next slide. Think of your body as being like a car. You want to create energy. You want to reduce energy loss. You would then want to focus the energy, and then you want to use the energy to do work. Car analogy. First, we put fuel into the car and it creates energy. Then if we were designing a car, we'd want to think about how do we reduce energy loss, things like friction and the exhaust. We want to optimize those things. We don't want to be losing energy unnecessarily. Then we would, I had to look this up because I'm not up on cars, but focusing the energy is done by the transmission of the car. And this takes the energy to the wheels of the car to move the car along the road. And it's similar in the human body. A healthy body is good at creating energy. Then we have this thing called incoherence in the body, and this is when we lose energy within the body. And then we want to focus our attention, and then we want to use that energy that we still have available for work to perform at a high level. So that's kind of what's going on. So let's go into each of these pieces a little bit more. So how do we create more energy in our body? So this is an image of a cell in our body. As you may know, if you've studied any biology, your body is incredibly complex and absolutely amazing. I went into medicine because it's just the most fascinating subject. There's so much to learn. The human body is truly a miracle. Your body every cell of your body, every organ system is constantly working. It's cooperating with other cells and other organs in the body, and it's communicating in order to attempt to keep the body healthy, healthy balance, healthy function. And your cells take macronutrients, you'll have heard of, carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, and they turn them into energy. And good health is a balancing act between health assets, things that are good for your health, we'll talk more about that in a second, and health liabilities, things that are bad for your health. The really cool thing is that through your free will, your lifestyle choices, and your behavior, you can dramatically influence your health. Of course, there are things that happen outside of your control, but there is a great deal that we can do to optimize how our body is healthy and how it's producing energy. Being sick also comes with significant costs. And, one of the problems with us human beings is that when we're healthy, we forget about that. We kind of forget about how awful it is to be unhealthy. And so, it's important to keep that in mind. Health and illness are a massive spectrum. It goes from being at death's door all the way through to being, a high-performing human and anywhere in between. So your health and your illness lies somewhere on that spectrum. And your body is sending you signals to help you stay healthy. And when the signals are strong enough, it may lead to symptoms like pain or swelling or fatigue. Again, another problem with the design of the human body is that often this comes on very, very slowly. And so we don't notice it happen. And also, people today are often so busy that they're just not paying attention to their body and they might not notice those subtle changes that are going on. So your body's amazing, but it has a lot of design flaws. In order to have a healthy brain, you have to have a healthy body, and vice versa. They are completely integrated with each other. It's funny, when I trained to be a doctor, it was very much a systems approach. You were like, I was a GP, but I was trained in cardiology and respiratory medicine and kidney medicine, renal medicine. And it's only in recent years that doctors have really started to kind of think about whole systems approach, but they are really important to each other. And it's highly unlikely for you to do something that's healthy for the rest of your body for that to be bad for your brain. By the way, the brain is a bit more tricky though, because it's much more sensitive to certain things. There's a lot of things that the rest of your body can get away with that you can't get away with your brain. So, like I said, having a healthy body, think of it as being a balancing act, like if you were balancing your finances between your assets and your liabilities. What am I talking about when I'm talking about health assets? It's breathing healthily. Obviously, the quickest way that a human being can die is if they don't get enough oxygen. You die in 3 minutes if you don't get enough oxygen. You also need a healthy diet. You need good hydration. You want to be thinking positive thoughts as much as possible. You want to be regulating your nervous system and your emotions. You want to be getting plenty of exercise. You want to be getting good sleep, healthy habits, positive relationships, good hygiene to prevent you from getting infections that might cause illness. And these last two are often overlooked. They are particularly good for your brain. New learning and fun and laughter. We want to be getting plenty of those in our lives, and it's what makes life worth living, but it's also really good for your brain. Health liabilities. Some of these are kind of the opposite. So dehydration, unhealthy diet, inactivity. And then we have genetics. And when I trained as a doctor, by the way, I graduated in, I'm showing my age, 1992, so it was a long time ago. We believed back then that your genetics were your destiny. The really good news is we've now discovered that not to be true. Some genes cannot be switched on and off. For example, if you have Down syndrome and you have trisomy 21, that can't be switched on and off. But if you have genetics for heart disease or Alzheimer's, then those genes, a lot of those genes can be switched on and off by lifestyle change, which is very, very empowering. Then, of course, unhealthy habits, smoking, excessive alcohol intake, or drug taking. All of these things are very bad for your body. And, going back, this just popped into my head, going back to think about, these elite athletes that we just talked about. Most of them, if they want to stay at a high level, are not smoking, drinking, or drug taking on a regular basis. Or, if they do for a period of time, they won't get away with it. Um, Avoiding medical care, I often see this, it's scary when you think there's something wrong with you. And I tell almost everybody, the sooner you get a problem diagnosed and treated well by a good doctor, the better for most illnesses. So, if you're worried about something, please go and see your doctor. It is highly likely that you'll have a better outcome the sooner you go. Emotional harm, including stress, contact with poisons, obviously. It's funny, I was coaching a family recently who live near a farm, and there's constant crop spraying. They cannot go outside for certain weeks of the year, and they have young children. They cannot let their children outside because the crops are being, either side of them, farms spraying toxins on the crops. And of course, we only get a tiny bit in our food, and it's protecting against bugs and stuff. But these kids, it's in the air. So obviously poisons are not a good thing. Contact with infections. We all remember the COVID days. That was not a good thing. Physical harm and extremes of weight. Being overweight or excessively underweight are really bad for your body and for energy production. Okay, energy loss, incoherence. So your cells are busy making all of this wonderful energy, but you lose some of it naturally. Some of that loss is inevitable and you can't change it, but some of it can be changed. And so energy loss, this can be, one of the terms for it is incoherence. And so what causes incoherence? Lots of things, as you can imagine. It can be an unhealthy mind, limiting beliefs, negative thinking, unmanaged stress, or it can be an unhealthy body, illness, acute and chronic inflammation, poor health habits, all those things that we just talked about. And so your cells might be producing this energy, but then your body is burning more energy than it needs to because it's fighting these problems that are going on within it. Okay. So now we get to focus that attention back to my old boss, Tony, where your focus goes, your energy flows. And it's one of my favorite quotes from him because it's so incredibly true. So what are we talking about here? Well, your ability to mindfully focus your attention on a task and then consciously shift your attention when you need to on demand is essential for peak performance. When your attention is steady, so is your mind. And think of attention as being like a spotlight. What it focuses on shapes what your brain and mind are doing. And the brain is constantly balancing three needs. Number one is keeping important information in mind. Sensory information is coming from the outside world all the time. And it's also grabbing information from your memory as well. And it also has mental operations going on. And it's like having a mental whiteboard in your mind. For anybody who's kind of studied any child psychology, it is called working memory. And it's really, really important. Then we have changing the contents of awareness, such as, this whiteboard needs to be updated based on what is going on. And, if you're not updating that whiteboard often enough, you're going to miss things that are happening that you needed to pay attention to. And then stimulation. it's a bit of a Goldilocks effect with stimulation. We don't want to be overstimulated. We don't want to be understimulated. If your brain is understimulated, especially if you have ADHD, it will go and look for stimulation. And a few things that stimulate the brain, new information helps with arousal level, and also things like the level of interest that you have. I recently went for the first time in a flotation tank. And it was very interesting. You're like deprived of sensory information. I actually turned the sound right down. There was some music, but I found it a bit irritating, so I turned it down. And so you're in this black space floating, and there's nothing happening, and you're just left alone with your own thoughts. And it's kind of really weird. It took me a while to settle into it at the beginning, and my brain was like, okay, what can we think about now? And I did eventually settle into it. So these three things are important for focusing that attention. Sometimes people fail to harness their focus for a few different reasons, and I call these success saboteurs. Maybe they fail to create a good plan. Maybe they don't have a high enough level of desire or drive to focus their attention. Maybe they're being vague about their goals, and the brain hates vagueness. If you're vague with your brain, it will just say, I don't know what you're talking about, and it will move on. It loves specificity. Maybe it is that you have poor willpower or discipline. No judgment from me at all. If that is what's going on, I suffer with that myself often. Maybe it's poor time management. Maybe you've got a lot of things are going on and you don't know how to prioritize. Maybe you have a lack of creativity or flexible thinking. That is really, really important. I was talking with somebody yesterday who has a colleague who is a very rigid thinker, and it creates a ton of problems. And this person, like, she cannot get something out of her brain once she's focused on it. She cannot let it go. It's not a good thing. Then maybe dabbling. And by the way, I do love a bit of dabbling myself. I created a mini TED talk that's called Why Dabbling is Good for Your Brain. Dabbling is appropriate sometimes for fun. But if you want to get really good at something, dabbling is not a good thing to do. You need to focus. Also, going solo, thinking that you can do it on your own. Going back to all of those, top performers that I showed you at the beginning, all of them had coaches to get where they wanted to get to, because you don't want to reinvent the wheel, and it takes a village to raise a child and an adult. Transitions can also be difficult for some people, not taking action, and then distractions, a huge problem today. You've probably heard that ADHD levels are rising in the population. I have a big concern that it's being misdiagnosed, and actually it's just that we are a lot more distractible because of the dreaded, cell phones and all of the things that are on them that distract our attention. So really quickly, why is distraction a bad thing? So this is what happens over time when you sit down to focus on something. It takes a while for you to get into a state and your nervous system to get aligned and to become productive. Very rarely do people sit down and 1 second later they're being highly productive. It takes a bit of time to get into it. And so you sit down and you start to get into it. And so your focus and your productivity increase. Now, the important thing is you can only stay in a highly focused state for a certain amount of time. The research suggests between 25 and 45 minutes maximum. And then naturally, your focus will decline. The system is not meant to stay in a focused state for much longer than that. And then if you kind of take a quick brain break and then you come back to it, you may get into the flow state, that flow state that we talked about, the white moment at the beginning, the state when you are at one with the task that you're doing, you lose track of time, it becomes effortless. And so this is what happens over time. The problem with distractions is this. Every time you get distractions, it's like you've taken a break from it. So, if you get distracted, if you're writing a blog and you hear your phone ping and you pick up your phone and you read a text and then maybe you go and answer the text, by the time you've done that, your focus and productivity has dropped off again. And when you return to it, you're having to go back again and refocus. And most of the time, multitasking is not actually multitasking. It is task switching, and it is not effective. The only exception to it where I encourage multitasking is if you're doing a task that you don't really like to do and it's boring, and so you want to have a bit of stimulation while you're doing it. A great example of this is me with laundry. I used to really detest doing laundry. I would be muttering to myself. I'd be saying, I'm a doctor. Why am I having to do laundry? And I would I would torture myself doing laundry. I decided that I would never do laundry without entertaining myself. I listened to podcasts, I watched TV on my phone. I'm always listening to something that, doesn't really matter if I miss something. And that multitasking actually helps me do the primary task. So as long as the tasks are not requiring a lot of cognitive function, you can do two, pretty mindless tasks at the same time. I hope that makes sense. So, every time you get a distraction, this is what is happening. And it may mean that you never get into your nervous system never gets into a productive enough state to do a good quality of work. And I see this a lot when I'm coaching executives. So now let's talk about how to use this energy that you have remaining, that you have focused, how to use the energy to become a peak performer. This is literally like going back to the car analogy. This is the rubber hitting the road. So you've got this focused attention. Now what do you do with it? And this is called the personal success formula. Tony Robbins had a different version of it, and I added a couple of elements to it that when I work with people, I think are really, really important. So if you are about to think about task A that you wrote down earlier. If you are really, really good at something, you are going to be, all of these things are going to be checked with this formula. So let's talk about each of these areas. So physiology is about how your body is working. This is not really about the underlying state of your body that we talked about earlier when we were talking about energy production. This is about the state of your body in the moment. It's about your posture, your breathing, whether you're moving or standing still, what's going on with your face. And if we think about somebody, going up on a stage to give a talk, they are not kind of slouched and, looking at the floor and looking miserable. They are up straight, shoulders back. They are breathing slow and steady, and they are looking upright or ahead of them. And very different. If you were to see somebody coming on the stage and they were in that slouching position, you'd be like, something is off with this person. And your physiology in the moment totally changes the state of your body. There's a really good TED talk. I'm forgetting the name of the woman who did it, but it's about how the Superman posture is really, really good for your physiology, and it changes how your brain is functioning, which I just think so cool. The quickest way to change your state is to change your physiology. Next is psychology. What are you thinking about in that moment? What do you believe about yourself and your abilities? What thoughts are you thinking about? Are these thoughts helping you or hindering you? And it is also about the meaning that you're giving to things. Going back to giving a talk, and this, believe me, this has happened to me in my early days of giving talks. I've now given over 250 talks, so this doesn't happen to me anymore. In the beginning, like if I saw somebody yawning, I'd be like, oh my God, my talk must be really boring. And now, if I spot somebody yawning, I just completely ignore them. I have no idea what's going on with that person. It could be that they have a newborn baby and they didn't get any sleep last night. It could be that my talk is boring. It could be that, that they are sick and they really need to go and have a nap. So be really careful about the meaning that you're giving to things. You could go off and kind of be like, oh my God, my talk is really boring now, and that will totally distract you from what you need to focus on. Next is focus. What are you paying attention to in that moment? Are you focused on problems, or are you focused on finding solutions? Are you focused on, oh, all of the bad things that happened to me on the past, or all of the bad things that could happen to me in the future? Or are you focused in the present moment, showing up and doing your best? Are you multitasking, like I just talked about, trying to do several things at once? Or are you focused entirely on the task at hand? Next, we have feelings and emotions. What emotional state are you in? What are you bringing in that moment? Are you energized? Are you motivated? Are you optimistic? Or are you feeling a bit drained, discouraged, or lethargic? And your emotional state has a dramatic impact on how your nervous system is working. And the final thing, and this is something that I find is really often overlooked, is environment. This is things like the people around you. Say you're in a workplace where everybody is negative and miserable. That is going to impact how you can show up. If you're in a workplace where everybody's enthusiastic and encouraging and, wants you to do your best, that's really going to change how you show up. Then it's the physical environment, the chair that you're sitting on. Is the desk at the right height? Is it too hot in the room? Is there a lot of background noise, or is there a weird smell that you are wondering what it is and it's distracting you? Technology, do you have access to the best technology for the thing that you want to be good at? If you're writing a blog article, do you have high-speed internet, and can you get on AI to help you do the research quickly? So the environment is really, really important, and we need to, create an environment, design an environment that supports us rather than pulling us back. And when I work with people one-on-one, and if you get the chance to work with me one-on-one, we will do this together, and we may do this exercise, like I said earlier, for multiple areas of your life. So that's the personal success formula. And the idea is you create this, you fill in the detail of it. So you say physiology, I want to be standing tall. I want to have my shoulders back. I want to be in an upright position. I want to have a smile on my face. I want to be breathing naturally. I want to be thinking about the people in the room and serving them at the highest level. I want to be focusing completely in this moment on the people and doing my best. I want to be feeling focused and energized, and the environment hopefully is supporting me as well. And we create this personal success formula, and then we practice it over and over and over again. Thinking back to like a tennis player, they figure all this stuff out. Like, they are not practicing tennis on, a community tennis court. They're practicing tennis on a really, really good tennis court. And they're practicing over and over and over again. You may have heard the 10,000 hours concept. It's actually been kind of shown not to really be that accurate, but in order to get really good at something, you're going to have to practice it many, many times. The first time I ever did this exercise was when I was training to be a coach for Tony Robbins, and I developed my personal success formula for being a coach. I practiced it. I was on this long training program where people were getting kicked out all the time. So I wanted to do my best, and I wanted to stay. I practiced this formula all the time. I'd be driving in my car, I'd be getting ready in the morning, and I'd be getting into a peak state and I'd be practicing it. And I am not kidding. I must have practiced it at least 500 times until it became like a switch in my brain. I could just say, I can get into my coach state now. And I often say I could coach in a burning boat or, a sinking boat or a burning building because I'm just able to get into it and I'm able to get super focused and nothing can distract me. So it's a really cool thing to be able to do. And it really is an extremely powerful tool. Okay. I must have been tinkering last night and moved some slides around. I do apologize. Okay, let's do a quick peak performance visualization. Close your eyes if you are comfortable. And I want you to take your right hand and place it on your tummy, just above your tummy button. And just focus for a moment on your breath. Feel your hand rising and falling with every breath in and out. Breathing in relaxation, breathing out any worries. Breathing in and out. And now I want you to just relax your hands, but stay in that relaxed, calm state. And I want you to imagine you 3 months from now. You have designed your peak state. You have been working on improving your energy production and focusing that energy. And you have got vastly better at whatever it was that you wanted to get better at. I want you to think for a moment about what would your physiology be like? Think about how your body would be situated. Would it be still or moving? What would your face be doing? And I want you to think about what you would need to be thinking about. What would you need to believe about yourself to become a peak performer in this area of your life? And what would you need to focus on? Where would you force your attention to go? And what would you be feeling in that moment? What emotions, what feelings in your body? And have a think about the environment that you needed to create to increase your chances of being a peak performer in this area of your life. Now put your hand on your heart and take a couple of deep breaths and anchor it in. This version of you is within you. It's there already, but it just needs to be practiced more often. It needs to be perfected, and it needs to be called up at will. And I want you to imagine for a moment how different this aspect of your life will be when instead of being at 40% or less of your potential, you're at 60% or 80% or even higher. What is possible in your life when you become a peak performer in this field? Wonderful. And now bring your hands together in prayer position and just rub them together to create some heat as you open your eyes and stretch it out. Just give your arms a bit of a shake. Wonderful. Okay, we are on the home straight. Quick recap. we've talked about the benefits of becoming a peak performer. It's good for, improved health and passion and zest for life, and becoming, better at whatever it is that you love to do. We talked about the 4 energy states. We talked about how to get into a peak state with that. We're becoming a superstar. And we talked about, we haven't talked about defining success, but that is a really important part of peak performance. And we also talked a little bit about what might be sabotaging your success. So my homework for you is to dive into all of this a little bit more, to to do some more work, to commit to what you need to change in your life in order to become more of a peak performer. So take some time after the call, maybe this afternoon, maybe this evening, but do it for yourself. No one else is going to do this for you. And believe me, it really is worth it. So thank you for watching. I'd love to go into all of this in more detail with you if you would like. Also, please know that for corporations, for businesses, I do corporate trainings. So if you're interested in me coming into your business and doing some corporate training, please book a discovery call with me. And if you'd like to know more about the work that I do, please check out my main website, drleonaurarhodes.com. To those of you who were not here live, who are watching the recording, thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you again soon.